Very good. So we're going to start with the first video. The first video is just is intro to the concept of the aware ego, or making the ego more aware. So let's get into that.
Methodologies of meditation or Buddhism are about destroying ego or collapsing ego, seeing through ego or transcending ego. Somehow the ego is the bad guy. Ego is not the problem. Ego is a necessity. What is ego? Ego is just the mediating factor between outer and inner, the mediating factor between the unconscious and the external world. You need an ego, you need a moderator, you need a portal in which outer and inner meet. The ego is not a problem. All of you actually have a personality that's distinct to you. They distinguish us from each other. The problem is not the ego. The problem is the level of fixation and over identification imbued in the ego. But the problem is if the ego is too narrow and the unconscious is sending us signals for expansion and we resist. The problem is that the ego may have been partly a micromanaging apparatus or adaptive strategy. And then when you hit midlife, something else is required of you. The world needs you in a different way, and you're stuck. You are confined by ego. It's not the ego, it's the constriction. The constriction, maybe the Buddhist term for that would be grasping. So they have this word in Sanskrit, atmagraha, the soul or the self, or we could say the ego grasping. The grasping is the emphasis of the problem, not the ego. Do you follow? It's the grasping or the confinement or the identification or the rigidity or the arrest in development or the fixation, that energetic tight fist. This is me and everything else to the exclusion. That's the problem. The ego is not the problem. You need an ego. In fact, you will go on a journey to expand ego. You will go into the netherworld. You will go into the labyrinth. You will leave temporarily ego behind. You will leave that narrow bit of real estate behind. And on your return journey, having faced trial and found treasure, where is it that you return, if not to the ego? But the return journey to the ego is a expansion of the ego. It makes it more flexible. It makes it more malleable. It introduces something new to it that creates more wholeness and more integration. The parameters shift. The boundaries shift. There's more inclusion and there's more flexibility going forward. So what we want is a more expanded ego that has flexibility. That flexibility is like all-wheel drive in a vehicle. It allows you to go to mountaintops. It allows you to descend into waters. It allows you to take on different weather conditions.
Chapter 5, Soul Transcendence and the Aware Ego. This chapter introduces the concept of the aware ego and its role in soul transcendence. The aware ego is a process where the ego becomes an ally rather than a barrier to soul growth. The ego and soul merge through the aware ego process, leading to higher awareness and the ability to witness life from a loving, non-judgmental perspective. This chapter emphasizes how we use the aware ego process to transcend ego-driven limitations, allowing the soul to evolve and awaken to its true potential.
Hey Psych2Goers, welcome back to another video. Healing is not easy. There's a lot of stigma regarding going to therapy and doing any independent inner self work. It's still seen as something that either weak or crazy people do. And that's just not true. It might not be 100% easy, but healing is a journey that leads to deep fulfillment that nothing outside of you could shake or take away. This process is very humbling, but with high risk comes high reward. During this journey, you will start to feel the growing pains of change and self-integration. Keep moving forward. This discomfort is helping you move into a beautiful life in which you have a deeper sense of inner peace. Here are 9 uncomfortable signs that you are healing. Number 1, You allow yourself to feel your emotions. When you're still stuck in survival mode, you're mostly focused on logic and what you see because emotions are painful for you to feel and process. It's hard for you to take the time and make room for your emotions to just be acknowledged and validated because it reminds you of hurt that you would have liked to keep buried. When you heal, you start acknowledging your negative and positive emotions because you realize that extreme focus on one is detrimental to your whole being and that you are a whole person. It's uncomfortable at first, but as you are no longer suppressing or denying them, you see the value of your emotions and feelings and of just letting yourself sit with them and allowing them to pass. Number two, you're getting better at expressing and maintaining boundaries. When you're not healed or in the process, you struggle with stating and enforcing boundaries because you're afraid of rejection, feelings of shame and guilt from putting your own interests first, or saying what's on your mind. It's unusual to set firm boundaries when you're not used to it. But once you start, it creates more healthy interpersonal dynamics because you stated your opinions and emotions. You have the mental and emotional clarity, and you are more capable of making your own decisions. Number three, you accept that you've been through difficult experiences. Life is hard and unfair, and instead of suppressing all of the experiences that you have been through, you acknowledge and accept that they happened. You accept that these people, places, and things had life-changing impact on you and probably still do. Accepted that these uncomfortable events impacted you in their entirety. They actually start to hurt you less because you've accepted the truth and are in charge of the narrative of your life again. Number four, you're less reactive and more responsive. When you're in survival mode, everything and everyone is a threat and is treated as such. Nothing is trusted, and you don't have time to sit and logically think things through because you are pure action, needing to defend yourself constantly. Once you start healing, your natural response of lashing out, shutting down, running away, or people pleasing is tested and slowly makes way for questioning your feelings and reactions regarding things. You even find yourself asking, why do I think this way? Where does this thinking come from? You start practicing emotional self regulation, self analysis, and responsibility. Number five, you realize that healing is not linear. Healing is uncomfortable because you're unearthing and confronting things you would have preferred to keep suppressed. Once you get into the rhythm, you realize that part of that healing is that this distress is okay and normal because it's not a straight road to inner peace and healing. You understand and have experienced the highs and lows of healing and know that the feeling of today will not match the feelings of tomorrow or even later on. Number six, you begin to step out of your comfort zone. Here's the thing about healing, it's not something everyone will do. However, if you decide to, it actually has far reaching benefits beyond the acceptance and acknowledgement of the traumatic experience. Once you are in the healing process, you're developing bravery around your emotions and your mind. With this newfound conscious control, you are no longer scared by things that scared you before. Scared of making a living situation change? You now are redecorating your bedroom and experimenting with paint colors you never thought you would. Going to a party you don't know? Before, you would have recoiled at the thought. But now it's a little less anxiety inducing, and you have a bit more confidence. Number seven, you easily accept disappointments and take them in stride. Life is a balance of success and failure, light and dark, ups and downs. When you're not healing, disappointments hit you like a freight truck to the chest, knocking all of the motivation and passion out of you. With healing, you understand that bad days do happen and can't be avoided, but are also temporary. Any disappointments or unmet expectations are accepted and taken in stride. You respond in better, healthier ways that are less reactive. Number eight, you have more inner peace. Healing brings about self-integration. If you're a Harry Potter fan, it's as if Voldemort brought back all of his Horcruxes and decided on becoming a better, complete person who accepts the natural way of life on a soul level. And if you're not a fan, it's like taking inventory of all of your experiences, painful or not, and seeing yourself as the whole person. You develop this inner peace because you deeply forgive yourself, and you can readily forgive others too. By having this peace and integration, you are less likely to self-sabotage because you're no longer a warring country within yourself with conflicting desires and emotions. You reconcile your inner differences. You no longer criticize and dismantle your character in your mind. And number 9, you welcome help and support. The independent survivor has a don't ask for help mentality. Maybe because they never got it when they needed it, or because of the harsh rejection when they spoke up. They shut down to get by and decided to do it by themselves because they had no choice. With healing, you start to realize that as strong as you are, you can't carry and do everything by yourself. You do need help. We all do. And it's available out there for you. You are more open to support and less afraid of having this need for assistance met. The pride and shame you might feel for asking for help are gone because you know that it's okay to let go of the heavy burden on your shoulders and have someone to lean on. Did you relate to any of these points? Do you feel that you are beginning to heal? As rewarding as the first step of healing is, you will run into the discomfort of your healing. And this will try to make you stop, to lessen or ignore the pain. But whatever you resist, you prolong. If you are in the healing process, well done. I'm proud of you for doing this work. And I hope you can find peace through it. And if you're not, that's okay, because healing is a long process that takes time. You're still living and doing what you can. Applaud yourselves. Did you find this video valuable?
Okay, this is the question from chapter 5. And I'm going to state it, and it's also in the chat section. But how does the ego both limit and support soul growth? Now we talked about it in the video. They talk about it in the book, but I want to hear you guys talk about it. Can you think of a situation where your life, where your ego either helped or hindered your spiritual process? Hello, everyone.
Hey.
You guys saw the question? Does anybody have any feedback on that? Thank you very much. Vivian.
According to A Course in Miracles, the ego doesn't have the power to enrich our lives, to change or fix anything, or to heal anything.
Well, how have you observed your ego, and how have you watched your ego evolve or become more aware?
I just don't think the ego can become more aware.
Yeah.
I mean, according to A Course in Miracles, the ego is a collection of thoughts that we made up about what we are.
Yes. But
Yeah.
but as the ego transforms and evolves, if we can become aware of more loving, more compassionate responses, more forgiving responses, our ego evolves and becomes more aware. Elliot.
So I was kind of questioning that question myself, but I guess what I might use as an example of the ego, how it helped me to evolve my soul, would be that, I mean, the ego protects me, when I'm fearful of something, like one of the things that I remember from your book, Ed, is that, how my ego constantly reminds me of things from my childhood that hurt me, that I was afraid of, that I was embarrassed about. And my ego can sometimes be a quick reminder when I'm in a situation where I feel that I'm going to be hurt, I'm going to be embarrassed, I'm going to be shamed or whatever. But then that's my ego, and it can help me to remind me. But then when my higher ego or my truer self comes into play, I start questioning that thought and say, why would you be embarrassed? Why would you be ashamed? Why would you, and where did this come from? And how were you ashamed? And what, and then I can just get into more thought about it. And not into stories, but just actual awareness of it.
Awareness. Thank you very much, Stephen. That's perfect. That's perfect. Alexis.
Yeah, so in terms of like what Stephen just said too, but I was gonna have something else to say, but then Stephen brought something to light. But so in the case that Stephen just said, like, is that basically like the ego, like basically setting boundaries for you? Because think about if you've been hurt or somebody's taken advantage of you in the past, and your ego says, "Oh, that's not how I should be treated," and then all of a sudden it's creating boundaries for you in the way that what you will tolerate and not tolerate, what you expect, things like that. So I think that's where the ego could potentially be a positive thing. But I think also for the ego, I do echo some of the other points that were made and about, and I think Vivian said it, that I don't see also how it always is helpful for you because it gets in your way a lot too. And it makes you live in this like paradigm of you know, who you think you should be versus, and then what reality, if it doesn't reflect what you think you should be, then it can be debilitating, or it can be you know, not good. So yeah, that's where I think it can play for a helpful thing, and then I think it also can be damaging in some ways too.
I agree. I agree. Does anybody else have any feedback or anything they want to share? Mary Beth.
Yeah, years ago when I first started studying Course in Miracles, I remember in our group we had the acronym, you know, the age-old acronym, you know, edging God out. And you know, the you know, that poem by T.S. Eliot about we shall not cease in our exploration, and at the end of our exploring we shall arrive at the place we started but know it for the first time. And so we started thinking it also is expressing God originally. And you know, and I think one of the things I was thinking about while everyone's talking is it's like one of the things about the ego is I can see my progress.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I, you know, I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. So in my human experience, I am exploring and yearning to be back in the garden, you know, wanting to be there. And sometimes I feel really far from it. But if I didn't have an ego, I guess I would not have that relationship, which in non-duality, there is no relationship other than the one. So it gives me an opportunity to kind of see my soul growth too.
Yes, that's perfect. That's really perfect. Thank you.
Oops.
Okay, we're gonna keep moving with the rest of the presentation because we got some lot of stuff to review tonight. But thank you guys. I think that was some good feedback. Chapter 6, The Wounded Child. This chapter delves into the concept of the wounded child, the part of us that carries the deep-seated pain, fear, and vulnerability. The wounded child is formed through early life experiences, trauma, and unmet needs. The wounded child leads to protective behaviors and limited beliefs in adulthood. This chapter explores how recognizing, healing, and integrating the wounded child is crucial to soul healing and transformation. Awareness of self-compassion are key tools in the healing process.
Do you know what it means to heal your inner child? An increasingly popular topic among self-help and mental wellness circles, the concept of the inner child refers to the part of ourselves that retains the memories, emotions, and experiences from our early lives. These experiences, whether positive or negative, can significantly impact our emotional well-being and influence our adult lives. Healing our inner child involves acknowledging and addressing past wounds, fostering self-compassion, and allowing ourselves to reconnect with the innocence, wonder, and joy of childhood. Through the transformative process of reconnecting with and healing our inner child, we rediscover joy and emotional wholeness. A word of caution, however. If you have a history of trauma, it may be better to explore your inner child with the guidance and support of a licensed mental health care professional. With that said, here are 6 signs that your inner child is healing, according to experts. Increased self-awareness. One of the initial signs of inner child healing is an enhanced self-awareness, says therapist King Eggle. She explains that recognizing the things that caused you pain in childhood and understanding their impact on you today is an important part of the healing process. And in doing so, we naturally become more attuned to our emotions, triggers, and patterns of behavior. We develop a deeper understanding of how our past experiences have shaped our present reactions, enabling us to make conscious choices rather than being driven solely by unconscious wounds. Emotional release and catharsis. Healing the inner child often involves addressing and releasing repressed emotions that have accumulated over time. Psychologist Dr. Diana Robb says that in opening a dialogue with your inner child, we may experience moments of emotional release and catharsis. This is a positive sign that we are creating space within ourselves for healing, allowing old wounds to be acknowledged and making room for new, healthier emotions to emerge. She also suggests therapeutic activities such as letter writing, journaling, and meditation to help with this. Heightened sense of joy and wonder. One of the most beautiful aspects of healing our inner child is the rediscovery of joy, wonder, and spontaneity. And as we reconnect with our inner child, we start to appreciate the small pleasures in life. Finding delight in simple experiences and activities may have been overshadowed by responsibilities and adulthood. According to clinical psychologist Dr. Alex Klein, our inner child's healing is reflected in our ability to laugh wholeheartedly, play without inhibition, and approach life with a sense of curiosity and awe. Liking this video so far? If you found this valuable and or helpful, please support our work by leaving a like, comment, and subscribe. Enhanced creativity and playfulness. What is something you loved to do when you were a child? Whatever it is, you may find yourself doing more of it again as you heal your inner child. Dr. Klein explains that you may also notice a resurgence of creativity and playfulness in your life. Engaging in creative endeavors such as painting, writing, dancing, or playing a musical instrument, allowing your inner child's creativity to flourish, can bring a renewed sense of vitality and fresh perspective to your life. More self-compassion and self-nurturing. According to clinical social worker Tricia Johnson, as our inner child heals, we learn to extend love, kindness, and understanding to the younger parts of ourselves that have endured pain or neglect. We become more forgiving of our past mistakes and embrace self-care as an essential aspect of our well-being. Engaging in self-reflection or spending time in nature become more important as we prioritize our own emotional needs and treat ourselves with more compassion. Increased emotional resilience. Healing your inner child equips you with greater emotional resilience over time, says psychologist Dr. Tiffany Brown. As you confront past wounds, work through emotional pain, and develop healthier coping mechanisms, you become more resilient in the face of challenges. You bounce back more quickly from setbacks and are better equipped to manage stress and adversity because your inner child healing journey strengthens your emotional core, explains Dr. Brown. Recognizing the signs of healing in your inner child is a powerful indication that you are on the path to emotional restoration and personal growth. As you continue to nurture and honor this vulnerable part of yourself, you will experience a profound sense of wholeness, authenticity, and a rekindled zest for life. So, Psych2Goers, have you started to heal parts of your inner child? What signs have you noticed? Let us know in the comments down below. And if you found this video valuable and or helpful,
the question is, how has your wounded child influenced your adult life, if at all? And how is healing the inner child contribute to your overall soul evolution? I want you guys to take a minute and look at that question, and I am going to pick some people because I want to hear their story, their answer to this. So let's. I think Alana, are you there?
I knew you were going to pick me.
How
Yeah,
did you know?
I just knew it.
I wanted to pick you because I think you are one person that is at this time in your life, you're embracing your inner child, and I just wanted you to kind of share that.
Yeah, one of the things I've learned recently, with a therapist that I was working with, a lot of people suffer from what's called CPTSD. And that's, something that a lot of us are probably not aware of, the damage that childhood trauma can actually create, not just to your soul, but your physical body.
Yes.
And, you have those continuous looping in your life. And when you think you've got through one issue, and then something triggers you, and then you're back to that
Cycles, yes, cycles.
starting point. Yes, so it goes around in cycles, like loops.
Yes.
And you have to recognize what is causing that trigger, what is causing you to kind of fall back into that, whether it's depression or sadness or whatever it was. And oftentimes people don't realize that a lot of it is caused by childhood traumas.
Yes.
And it does take work, it takes energy, it takes time to heal. It's not something you can just talk about. You've got to really work at it. And that's something that I made a priority in my life, to try and really not fix myself, but to kind of heal myself mentally, physically, and spiritually. So yeah, I think that's something that we have to all acknowledge and be willing to accept it. Because for so many of us, we just kind of push it aside. Oh, I can deal with that. But you don't realize how deep it is in your soul and how deep it is in your DNA. And also past lives can affect that. I'm not sure if I believe in all that, but past lives can also affect that trauma as well. So it's a lot of work. You've got to keep it. It's constant. It's not something you just sort of.
It is. It's a continual process. Well, how have you added play back into your life at this stage of your life?
Well, I realized that, I can't continue living this loop. So it's time to kind of really focus on it and to make it a priority. And that's what I do every morning. I kind of do a lot of gratitude journaling, and forgiving people that I think may have hurt me or damaged me in some way, and a lot of forgiveness. And that's just part of the process. But I could write a whole book, but yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Does anyone else have something they may want to share about their wounded child or about the wounded child healing process? Anybody? Elliot?
Yeah, so at first, I was looking at the first part of the question, and I was like, the wounded child is like, who wants to talk about the wounded child, whatever. But I actually have done some inner child work and some matter of fact, with you, Ed, I've done a lot with you. So one of the things that my, wounded child might have been telling me for many years is if I'm wanting to try something new or step out on a limb and just step out of the box, in my life, whether it be, and my wounded child might be, you're not good enough, you don't know how, that's not who you are, all kinds of things that, and who is the voice of my wounded child? I always say it's the voice of my parents, my very strict father. That to me is the voice of my wounded child. So, but as I've started healing that wounded child, one of the things that I, do for the evolution of that is actually self-talk to that, inner child, that inner voice, and say like, well, yes, you can. You don't know if you can do it. Like, for instance, I would like to tell people that I started painting at 50, that I didn't even start painting until I was 50, because that's what I believed. I picked up a paintbrush and started painting at 50, when in reality, when I think back of my childhood, I was extremely creative. I was extremely, I was always doing artsy, crafty things and really enjoyed it. But that was all kiboshed because of that wounded child. That wounded child didn't even recognize
What do
that.
you have you reconnected with your artistic side?
Yes, I now am a painter. I'm an artist. I'm,
I love it. I love it.
so yeah.
Well,
So, and that's just it. It's an example that, I totally, my wounded child would say like, oh no, I know nothing about art. I know nothing about, creativity. But through the healing process, I can say, oh, I'm an artist, and I always was.
And you nurture that, and you becoming aware that your inner innocence wants to share your art and feel the joy of expressing yourself as an artist. So yeah, all that's really important in the healing process.
And for myself, not even, you know, like people often say to me, like, well, do you share your work? Do you sell your work? Do you? And I'm like, oh no, 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 no. And I'll get past that someday. But for me, it's all about me. It's about me just enjoying the idea of being an artist.
I love it.
You know.
All right, guys, we're gonna keep moving.
Someone has their hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Let's get to that. Who had their hand up? Oh, very good. Yes. Claudia. I see you.
Sorry, no, that's okay. We can move on. It was
You sure?
well, it was just about a story about my father, and I don't know if I've mentioned this. My father wrote me a letter in his later life, and he said he loved all his children. He just didn't know how to. He was raised up fast and really, and but his father was very cold and raised up really fast, and so that says a whole lot about me and probably most of us is we don't know any better because we never learned certain things. And so, I mean, I have to apologize to my kids right now for things that I might have done that, you know, weren't appropriate. But anyway, that's all I wanted to say was that it's, you know, it was healing to hear that from him and to understand that, you know,
That it
we
was.
just don't know what we don't know. And,
Yeah.
yeah. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Chapter 9, Out of the Shadow into the Light. This chapter focuses on the journey of bringing hidden shadow aspects of ourselves into the light of awareness. The shadow represents the part of us we deny, avoid, and suppress. Our shadow identities can be uncomfortable or socially unacceptable. The chapter emphasizes that these shadow aspects, when acknowledged and integrated, offer valuable lessons and contribute to our wholeness. By embracing all parts of ourselves, light and dark, we move toward better self-acceptance and harmony.
Parts of ourselves we choose to ignore or keep hidden from others, according to Carl Jung, can actually reveal not only our true selves, but also our life's purpose. I'm about to share with you how it works. Shadow work is a concept that has been explored by Carl Jung, a renowned psychologist, and it's all about revealing the hidden aspects of ourselves that we're not even aware of. It's about confronting our dark sides, weaknesses, and fears, and embracing them as a part of who we are. Why is this so important? Well, the truth is that our shadows hold the key to our true purpose in life. By acknowledging and accepting our shadows, we can access a deeper sense of self-awareness, and that's when the magic happens. But there is also a dark side to it. Emotions such as fear, anger, sadness, and even shame are experienced by us as we start to practice self-discovery doing shadow work. Why does that happen? Well, because we're forced to confront the parts of ourselves that we've been trying to hide, even from ourselves. It's hard, but it's a crucial one because it allows us to develop a sense of compassion and empathy towards ourselves. We start to realize that our shadows aren't something to be ashamed of, but rather something to be embraced. One of the biggest challenges we face is the fear of being judged or rejected by others. We're afraid that if we reveal our true selves, people will abandon us or think less of us. But the truth is that our shadows are part of what makes us unique and authentic. They're a part of our story. And only by being aware of that do we develop a sense of self-acceptance and self-love, but there is more. As we go deeper into our shadows, we start to uncover patterns and behaviors that have been holding us back. We start to see how our shadows have been influencing our relationships, our careers, and our overall well-being. It's like peeling back the layers of an onion. It's painful, but it's necessary. That's when the insights start to arise. We start to realize why we've been stuck in certain patterns, why we've been attracting certain people into our lives, and why we've been holding ourselves back. The most transformative moment comes when we finally embrace, when we finally accept our shadows. I know it's hard, but that's when we experience a profound sense of acceptance and love for ourselves. It's like a weight has been lifted off our shoulders, and we can finally breathe. We start to see that our shadows aren't something to be feared, but rather something to be celebrated. They're a part of what make us human, and they're a part of what make us unique. When we finally embrace our shadows, we start to see the world in a different perspective. We start to see that everyone else is struggling with their own shadows, and that we're all in this together. We start to develop a sense of empathy and compassion towards others. And that's when our relationships start to transform. We start to attract people who accept us for who we are, shadows and all. We start to see that our purpose in life isn't about achieving some grand goal or accomplishment, but rather about being true to ourselves. We start to see that our purpose is to live a life that's authentic and real. And that's when we start to experience a sense of fulfillment and joy that we've never experienced before. As we practice shadow work, we start to see the profound impact it has on our lives. We start to see how it's helped us develop a deeper sense of self-awareness, self-acceptance, and self-love. We start to see how it's helped us develop more meaningful relationships and how it's helped us find our true purpose in life. So what's the takeaways? It's that our shadows hold the key to our true purpose in life. It's that by embracing and accepting our shadows, we can develop a deeper sense of self-awareness, self-acceptance, and self-love. It's that our shadows are a part of what makes us unique and authentic, and that they're a part of what makes us human. So if you're feeling stuck, lost, or uncertain about your purpose in life, I encourage you to do this work. Reveal the true you you've been hiding for so much time. It's not easy. It's hard, I know, but it's a crucial one. And if this video helps you today, share your own experiences with shadow work in the comments below. And if you're new here, consider subscribing for more content.
Okay. I think we're going to talk about this, respond to this question at the end of the presentation, but I want to go over the question anyway. What are some shadow aspects of yourself that you tend to deny and suppress? I want you guys to think about that. I think that, I did shadow work many, many years ago. And I think that in the process of doing that, I've become much more integrated. I'm less separated and cut into pieces and parts. I feel like I'm much more whole. But it was about doing the shadow work. And why is it important to embrace both the light and the dark aspects of our personality? So we'll get into that discussion in a few minutes. But let's move on to the next chapter. Chapter 10, The Inner Child and the Inner Critic. This chapter explores the dynamic between the inner child and the inner critic. The inner child represents innocence, creativity, and vulnerability, while the inner critic is the harsh, judgmental voice that seeks to protect the child by criticizing and controlling behaviors. The chapter emphasizes the importance of understanding the relationship between these two aspects and learning how to quiet the inner critic in order to heal and empower the inner child. Balancing these two forces is key to achieving emotional well-being and self-compassion.
We all have a voice in our head that makes judgments about any given situation. Sometimes the judgment is helpful because it helps us escape harm or avoid mistakes. But sometimes the voice is harmful when it's overly critical by putting you down and making you doubt yourself. That's what I'm talking about today. 7 signs that your inner critic is too harsh and making you feel hostile toward yourself. I'm Dr. Tracy Marks, a psychiatrist, and I make mental health education videos. Number 1, you're never satisfied with your work. You have a perfectionistic tendency and you set unrealistic goals. When you're working on something, you may find yourself saying, "Is that it? Are you really done with this?" No matter how hard you try, you can't seem to be content with your work. You're always finding faults and ways to improve, which can lead to feeling like you're never good enough. Number 2, you dwell on your mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes, but when you're too self-critical, you dwell on them long after they've happened. You might even beat yourself up over small slip-ups that don't really matter in the grand scheme of things. Number 3, you spend a lot of time comparing yourself to others. When you're too self-critical, you often find yourself comparing your own work or abilities to others. Even if the person to whom you're comparing yourself to hasn't even achieved as much as you have, you still find a reason why they're at an advantage over you. For example, suppose people praise you for doing really good work by seeing the big picture of things and helping people organize. And you think, well, that's nice, but seeing the big picture hasn't earned me more money. Nancy, who's not good at planning and seeing the big picture, got promoted over me. So for you, being good at planning still leaves you feeling unfulfilled. Number 4, you blame yourself for all the negative things that happen around you. You spend a lot of time deconstructing events and see your actions as the reason that something bad happened, even if there's 5 degrees of separation between you and the negative outcome. Even if you acknowledge to yourself that you really are on the fringe of the blame and not directly responsible, you still overfocus on your shortcomings and the role that they played. And what you're doing here is magnifying your contribution well beyond what it actually was. Number 5, you don't try hard for things, give up easily, or don't try at all because you believe, what's the point? You're going to mess it up anyway. Or why bother? Things never work out in your favor anyway. Even if you don't see your ineptitude as the reason for failure, you believe life and circumstances are just against you, like being jinxed to always get the bad deal because you attract bad outcomes. So it may be bad luck, but there's something about you that just attracts bad luck. Number 6, you're never satisfied with your appearance. You may have a hard time seeing yourself as desirable. You wished you looked differently or spoke differently, and these feelings affect your confidence around others. It could also affect your relationships if you project these thoughts and feelings onto other people. Projection is an unconscious process where you attribute your own thoughts to someone else. I say that you don't like me and think I'm unattractive. Now, you may think that, but you never told me that or ever said anything critical to indicate that. But I think that about myself, but I say that it's what you think about me. So that's how your inner critic can affect what you think about other people if you assume that they think the same about you that you think about yourself. And then there's number 7. You feel guilty about a lot of things, even if they're in the remote past. And this is similar to blaming yourself for things, but it takes it a step further. With basic self-blame, you may keep pushing yourself to do better and better and may never feel satisfied that you've finally done your best. So that's more of an aiming for perfection thing. But with guilt, you can't forgive yourself for decisions that you made or things that you said that may or may not have resulted in a negative outcome. Here's an example. This is not real. John proposes to me after graduation. John wants to get married and immediately have children. I turned down John's proposal because I want to travel the world before I settle down with a family. I take a job in Europe, and that's the end of the relationship with John. I become very successful in my career and don't get too serious with relationships because I want to get back to the United States eventually, and I don't want another John situation where I'm ready to go home, but my Italian stallion doesn't want to follow me back to the States. I make it back to the US as a single woman in my late 30s and can't find a life partner. I spend a decade blaming and eventually hating myself for all the decisions I made along the way to put my career first over relationships. Now, that's a long example, and anyone can be disappointed by those same set of circumstances. But the difference is in my level of acceptance and self-compassion. It's one thing to be disappointed at the life milestones that I missed out on and have regrets, but it's another thing to internalize the blame to the extent that I'm overloaded with guilt, shame, and self-loathing. Stay tuned for part 2 of this topic of confronting your inner critic. It will publish next week, and when it's out, I'll have it linked in this video and it'll appear right here.
All right. This is our final question, but we're going to look at both these last questions. How does your inner critic show up in your life? And how does it affect your self-esteem? You know, how does it affect yourself? And how can you balance the inner child's vulnerability with the inner critic's desire for control and protection? All right, guys. So if you'd like to go back to the questions in the chat, and I'd like to get some feedback. We talked about the inner critic, and we talked about the wounded, the shadow. So Cheryl, I see you, and I see you there. Could you share with us your point of view on one of those questions? First, you got to get unmuted.
That does help. Okay. So, to state the question, how does my inner critic show up?
Look at the question again. It's in the chat.
Okay. Well, my inner critic shows up a fair amount because I'm always criticizing myself. I always made a mistake, or why didn't I do something differently? And then I then try to be more, how can I say this, easier on myself. That is, realizing that I'm not God, that I do make mistakes, that maybe I'm not looking at this in a particular right way, that there are other ways to look at it. So I try to give myself space to realize that I'm not perfect, but that I do have some things that I don't do right, but that I am still not horrible. That is, I give myself some room for grace.
You know, I would also share, I think we talked about this before. Also, you have to be aware of when you're caught up in your judgments, your critical judgments about yourself. I think a lot of times we get intoxicated with judging ourselves, and we're so used to it, we're so comfortable with it that we go there instantaneously. We're already in judgment, and it becomes like Alana talked. It becomes a cycle. It becomes a cycle that we do over and over and over again, and it makes us more and more insecure. It affects our self-esteem, and it makes us more miserable. You know, unless we have a stop gap, unless we have an awareness to that patterns, those cycles, we're going to continue down that path and make our lives miserable. Self-awareness is a stopgap. Self-awareness is the opportunity to see the workings of our contracted mind, of our judgmental mind, and give forgiveness to ourselves. You know, I'm sorry. You know, I'm bearing some stories about myself that can't be true. Please forgive me. Please forgive me. All right. What about you, Pat? There were questions about shadow. That's what I want to deal with you on, is the shadow.
Yeah. I was thinking about this as you were speaking, and you know, I grew up in this first generation immigrant home, and there was a lot of pressure that we were going to be better than our parents and our grandparents who came to this country. And what I found is that I grew up being very angry and, you know, having to be right, even if I wasn't right. So it was those things, those negative things that were being brought out of me. And it created a fight or flight situation. So either I fought real hard, or if I just like, I'm not going to win this, I just took off, you know, whether it was relationships, my first marriage, it ended that way. And so it just made me, it's reflective over all these years to really become more self-aware of those shadows.
Yes.
That they're not necessarily bad. It's who I am. And I've tried to turn it into more passion
Yes, I love it.
and righteousness. That yeah, the world is unfair, but we can have passion in our lives to fight for better situations, and we don't have to be angry about it. We can just turn that anger into more positive, actions that are focused on being more passionate, if you will, about the issue.
Yeah, whatever leads us back to self-love is the right strategy. Whatever it is, whatever leads us back to letting ourselves off the hook, whatever leads us back to our hearts and forgiveness and becoming aware of our judgmental nature is where we need to create the space for peace.
And that forgiveness piece that you just said, that's so key.
Yes.
You got to be able to, others may not forgive you, but you got to be able to forgive yourself.
Yes.
Move
Exactly.
forward.
Well, Charles, I want you to have the last word, and even in response to the questions that were presented in the chat, and just your point of view.
I will keep it ever so brief. First of all, valuing what everyone said and what you contributed to this. And I believe that the ego is not to be dissolved, but evolved. And that evolving is putting it in its place and that realizing that it does have, in this human form, it does have a place. And so far as the dark side, my darkest moments have given me the deepest insight into the genuine purpose that I'm here for. And the root of it being self-forgiveness and self-love. And so all the moments that I so judged as the judge and executioner, I now can be the observer and realize I came through that. And I came through that in a manner and way that has deepened my character and my will to be giving more. And I am being so deeply gentle on Charles now. And I said at the conference that I attended, at the seminar at Anton, the Allied, the New Thought Network, that is an association of all New Thought teachings, that I've gained more in the past 3 years, 80 to 83, than in all my 55 years of ministry, because of the deeper work that I've done. So I really encourage everyone to stay with it, and that it's not about aging, it's about saging in a way that you realize how much you have to gain by doing the inner work, even though it may be painful. The ultimate reality of moving through is a deeper joy and regard for yourself than you've ever known.
That's
So,
perfect.
that's it.
I would use the word uncomfortable.
Yeah, uncomfortable. Yeah, because it's not
uncomfortable.
It's not cozy.
Pain seems like something you should run from, but we can be aware of being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
That uncomfortable place is where we grow.
Yeah.
Is where we have greater awareness, where our hearts become full in that uncomfortable area.
And when you breathe through it, deep breath, hand on the heart, feeling a sense of love and regard for the distance you've traveled, it's not nearly as uncomfortable in regards to what comes through. And I just want to take a quick moment to, first of all, acknowledge Edward for the stellar, brilliant job he's doing on this class and how he's promoting it, and that it is being presented here through Soul Transcendence, but he's also presenting it to have an opportunity for you to contribute to Mind Your Own Becoming. And that is so easy. There's a donate button on the website, MYOB Incorporated spelled out.org. And if you do give a one-time gift, whatever you give, just on the memo, make a note, soul power. That will help our accounting. But Edward, I just am so grateful to you for the love that you bring and the insight, and for everyone that's shared here tonight. Bless you for contributing and adding to the deepening of our hearts and souls together, because together we can see and reimagine not only ourselves, but our world.
Thank you, Charles. Thank all of you guys. I wish we set this meeting for an hour, so I wanted to stay on task with that. But there's so many hearts here that I'd love to share and hear more stories about. And tonight's class was really about, introspection, looking at yourself, looking at your passions, looking at your patterns, like Ilana said, looking at your cycles that we find us and becoming aware of them so that we can heal them in love and in the light. Thank you, guys. I look forward to next week. Bring your creative minds and your hearts, and I look forward to connecting next Tuesday. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot.